A number of years ago, I was getting home from work. It was late. I was pretty tired. And just as I was getting in the door, I was putting my things down, and the phone rang. And I wasn't going to answer it, but I could see on the call display there was a close friend. And when I picked it up and said hello, the guy could barely say my name. And then he said, "If you hear something has happened to me, can you tell my family that I love them?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "If you hear something has happened to me, can you tell my family that I love them?" And then he started to break down. He was thinking about suicide. He was thinking about suicide. And it took me a moment to think. Then I asked him a question. I said, "Do you remember the day your son was born?" I said, "Do you remember the day your son was born? Do you remember that day?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Do you remember the first time you saw his little fingers and his little toes?" I said, "Do you remember the first time you held him in your arms? Do you remember that day?" And he said, "Yes." "And when you looked into his eyes, do you remember what you said?" "You told him you were going to be the best daddy in the world. You said you'd always be there. You said you'd always be there and you'd never let him down." I said, "Don't you break your promise." I said, "Don't you dare break your promise." And he broke down and he sobbed into the phone. And then he began to pour out his heart. And he went to a dark place. And I went there with him. And then he poured out his soul. And he went to a painful place. And I just went there with him. I didn't try to fix him. I just went there with him. When people are hurting, they don't want you to fix them. They want you to listen. They don't want you to know how smart and clever you are. They just want you to listen. You see, that's how you develop true intimacy with people. That's how you develop real intimacy with people. And yes, I know most people use intimacy as a sexual word. Intimacy is not a sexual word. Intimacy comes from the Latin word intimus. It means sharing innermost thoughts and sharing innermost feelings. So when you hear people using intimacy as a sexual word, they are usually talking about the one thing they are not. And you will never develop intimacy unless a person feels heard. We will never develop intimacy with a person until they feel heard. Would you agree with that? You see, what we're talking about is uncommon listening. People with uncommon relationships are uncommon listeners. If you want to connect with people, you must become an uncommon listener. Question is, do you listen? Do you listen to your customers? Do you listen to your coworkers? Do you listen to your kids? Do you listen in your marriage? Do you still listen in your marriage? Never lose that. Never lose that.